Chris O'Neill, welcome to the latest Fearless in Devotion. Now, just before we start, I don't know if anyone's ever seen that Simpsons episode where Mr. Burns gets the baseball team together, and a series of unfortunate incidents seem to happen to every single member. Well, that's what's happened to the Fearless in Devotion team today. Liam's out on a walk with his family. That's fair enough. Tim's dog's sick, so let's all send our love to the Dachshund. And I don't know where Reece is. It's like he's fallen into a giant hole. It's either that or he's gone to France for the Rugby World Cup. So carrying on that sort of Simpsons analogy, we have our very own Daryl Strawberry here in a guest in Ian Herbert, who is deputy chief sports writer at the Daily Mail. He's a long-time Wrexham fan, and he's got a book coming up which we'll touch on later. But first, I think the burning question, Ian, is giant hole in the ground or France?
I don't know. I mean, you're never sure with climate change what might happen, so there might be a giant hole somewhere. But if it creates an opening for me, you've got to take your openings in life. So no, I'm a massive fan of all your work, Fearless in Devotion. Great to be on. Thanks, Andy. Thanks for having me on.
Oh no, really glad to have you on. Now, before we sort of get into your book, I mean, I'm going to say it's been a busy week. It's always a busy week, but especially with the transfer window, there's been a lot happening. Let's start with the match yesterday. We were just discussing how hard it is to get tickets, and neither of us were able to go yesterday just because we can't get them. Same for Stockport. I was always saying to Ian, it's sort of like part of me sort of thinking, I suffered. I was there Braintree away 4 times, one where it was called off just before. Do I deserve a ticket? Well, probably not more than anyone else, really, because there's a real sort of lot of interest around Wrexham at the moment, and we'd be churlish to sort of be annoyed with people who want to go. But match-wise, I managed to see it. I don't know if you did, Ian.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah,
you get it on the iFollow, can't you?
Yeah.
I thought it was a great, solid performance, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, I've been away covering the Women's World Cup for the Mail, who I work for, and so I kind of missed the start of the season in many ways. I did watch the streams. Obviously, watched the start of the NK Dons game, and just wondered what kind of a league we'd stumbled into, really, and like what there was a lot of this talk about us being favourites for League Two and stuff, and it has felt a bit bumpy, but yeah, I mean, I thought I was really encouraged by it, and also by the Bradford game in midweek, which I think we could get tickets for, perhaps.
Yeah.
It just sort of felt like. I mean, one of the things that Parky seems to be talking about is just the physicality. We haven't quite been measuring up to the physicality in League Two, and there were 2 games where I thought we really did. I mean, we did look physical enough. But yeah, James McLean really just for me, that is the one. I mean, what a player! I mean, Tuesday night, I mean, you just felt like he's going to get sent off a few times this season, maybe. Do you know what I mean? Because he likes to tackle, doesn't he? He's right in there. But what a player! What an acquisition for us! And I think that could be. I mean, not just the skill, the talent. He's pointing. He's pointing players out to where they should be, but just the physicality. I thought he made a big difference, and again yesterday.
No, I agree completely. I mean, I was going to sort of mention McLean, but it's you wanted another leader on the pitch, and I think earlier in the season we didn't have Luke Young wasn't playing. McLean wasn't available, and you sort of thought that we couldn't really stand up to a lot of League Two teams. But now I think he's changed the mix a little bit in midfield with O'Connor coming in, Young coming back in, and Lee giving more of a free role. And I think that's worked. That's solidified us. I think Luke Young, for all his sort of supposed faults, is key to us. He drives us forward.
Yeah. There's something about Luke Young that makes me feel a bit emotional, really, because in a sense he has been there all along, hasn't he? Through the really difficult, the Braintrees, the Eastleys, the Dorkings or whatever. And I slightly worried for him, as I'm sure we all did, last season when he sort of dropped out with the team. And I love Luke Young, and if I might just make that statement.
Have you had 10 pints, Ian? Are you?
I love Luke Young.
The bar.
It's barely lunchtime, but it's, I think a lot of people would feel the same. That great to see him, front and center really, and playing such a key role, and retain, and getting his place, and really earning that place.
No, and no one can say he hasn't, because he's been through it. He could have, he could have left in the summer. He could
Yeah,
have seen what's coming in and thought, right, am I going to make this team? Maybe Parky doesn't rate me. Torquay away, where it's a big club to him. He didn't come on or anything the last
yeah,
game of the season, and I
yeah,
sort of thought then, I went, oh, that's a bit wrong. I think we'd
yeah.
won the league. It's an important game for Luke Young and his family. Not to bring him on, I thought, oh, there could be trouble here this summer, but
I
he
agree with you,
stayed.
Andy. I agree with you totally. Yeah,
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 he stayed, he knuckled down,
yeah,
and now I would say he's probably one of the first names on the team sheet, because
yeah.
he just makes us tick. Now, maybe George Evans, and we might come on to we will come
Mm,
on to the signings in a bit. Maybe that's another challenge for him, a big defensive mid. But Luke Young has had a lot of challenges, and he's seen them all. He's seen them all off, and
yeah,
his set plays are just next level. And I think when you've got him and Tom O'Connor delivering from either side, I think the size we've got. And one thing I was going to say is, how good is it to see Aaron Hayden back? I mean,
yeah.
I worried
We
about
were
him.
just, my brother Pete and I were just saying that on Tuesday night. Just immense. Just so that was so good. That was so good.
Yeah,
And what a presence! What a presence! And you just hope that he can, after having successive seasons, with losing him at the key part of the season, that we can know that doesn't happen again. Immense.
yeah,
And I think generally, I think a lot of us, don't we, feel that we just hope that the players who've got us up, you know, like Luke. I mean, Aaron obviously would be a shoe in every week, but you mentioned Tom O'Connor there. He's just such a lovely player, such a
yeah,
gifted midfield player. I mean, never mind him playing sort of centre half in really hard games when he's been injured last season, but there was a few moments yesterday. We just got such a gift, and that some of these players that have taken us on the journey out of the National League can stay with us, because I think for a lot of us, whatever lies for me, whatever lies ahead. I mean,
mm,
that Boreham Wood game last season, that promotion, it was more than a promotion, wasn't it? There was something symbolic about it. It was ending the kind of the injustice of that a lot of us felt, and it would just be fantastic if quite a lot of those players can be part of the journey, as they say these days. Can stay
uh,
part of the team.
I know what you mean, and yeah, it was the end of, I don't know, 13 years, 14 years of hurt, but
Yeah,
in many ways it would have been purer to get up as a fan-owned club,
yeah,
but we did, we did it in the next best way, really,
yeah,
and that doesn't make it any less of an achievement. The fact that we spent so much money doing it. I mean, when we sort of look at the development of the team, and you sort of say that not all these players will come with us as we look to go through the leagues. Now,
yeah,
there was one signing that didn't actually make it. We will go more into the ins and outs of why that didn't happen. But Luke Armstrong. So people were saying, did we need Luke Armstrong? Is he? He scored 16 goals last term. Is he the sort of player that we should be breaking our transfer record for? Well, I sort of think that the player like Luke Armstrong is the next step in our sort of evolution. So when Parky came in, he didn't have really a midfield he was happy with and wanted to play a target man. So we brought in the likes of Ollie Palmer. Now I think it's a bit different. You saw yesterday, and you were talking about Tom O'Connor, like, we want to play football. So if you're moving away from the target man, you need an all action front man who's really going to occupy defenders and make space for the likes of Mully, McLean, whoever else is coming in. I did sort of think Luke Armstrong was that player. I don't know if you've seen much of him at all, but from what I could see in the highlights, I
mm.
thought that was our next step of our evolution, really. And it's quite annoying we didn't manage to get him. I mean, do you sort of have any sort of insight on what happens in those sort of last sort of minutes? How this could have gone wrong?
Yeah, I don't know the ins and outs of that deal really, but I mean, obviously, I mean, you and I both know as reporters, in the media, that a lot of stuff can happen. It can just be um, contractual issue, or it could be that player, as you get towards the end of a window, that
Yeah,
clubs just want that bit more, and it just all falls down. And um, I just don't know. I mean, it's not a bottomless pit for Wrexham in a sense, is it? Because there are financial fair play rules coming into play now, and I think that was
Yeah,
why they tried to do quite a lot of buying in the National League, where the regime is more benign, and they were able to do that.
yeah.
Obviously, the new sponsorship deals will help to bring in the revenue to offset the cost, but I just don't know. And I mean, I just don't know how some of it happens. I kind of get the feeling that with some of the way that the strikers have been bought, it's not really necessarily been a plan. It's not been
Right.
a planning. So I mean, I don't know. You know, so Ollie Palmer, for example. I mean, I didn't get the feeling talking to Les Reed, for example, for the book, that was kind of right. We definitely want to buy that target man in the January of that season. It was just that, you know, we weren't really fully on it in the first half of the season that
Yeah.
Stockport went up. There was definitely a bit of disagreement about whether they wanted to sign Palmer. There were, behind the scenes, that it wasn't, unanimous.
Mm.
But there was the feeling that this could just get us. This could be the difference, and obviously Palmer is not going to be with us forever. He's not. He's not the youngest, and we are just. I suppose what the season's shown us is just how reliant on Moles we are, and
Mm.
that doesn't sort of seem quite right in a way. You can't flourish if you're sort of so wholly dependent on a forward. But where does Waters fit in? I mean, I don't know. He doesn't, so far hasn't looked like the guy who's going to score us 30 goals. So
No,
yeah.
no.
So in terms of why that deal fell down, I don't know what happened, but it certainly feels to me like if you were going to decide where you were going to invest, a big chunk of the money you've got, you would say you want another striker who's going to really not guarantee you goals, but was going to be able to do it for you in the way that you describe.
Yeah, I've got a bit of insight. So we have a snout on our show, a guy called Wonder Boy, who I think the club are trying to track down. He's got a
I
theme
like that.
tune.
Yeah.
He's got a theme tune who the others insist that I play before each little bit. So right, okay, there we go. Right, that's plenty enough of that. Oh, I can't turn it off. All right. Okay. So these are his thoughts on it. Armstrong was due at the ground late morning. Medical, personal terms, media work all done. Harrogate dragged their heels as they wanted to bring in new signings. We had little or no time to get the paperwork sorted, and we took way too long. Harrogate and Welsh FA were told it should be done by 10:45. 11:50 was when it was completed and sent out. All parties are appealing for international transfer, which would allow us to have an extra hour to complete the deal. It was a record amount, around 500,000, including add-ons. We knew Harrogate weren't going to go for anything less than that number. So in many ways, we left it too late. I mean, do you think we left it a bit late to tie up a deal like that? We've known that Mullins been injured since July. I mean, is that just trying to get a little bit off the price, or to see if other options became available?
Yeah, well, I just don't know. I just don't know the ins and outs of it. I mean,
Mm,
interesting sort of information there. I don't know the ins and outs of it, but I mean, when you get towards the last day of the window, you're always, you're always in that kind of risk of something falling down. That the other club decide they need that player that much more, or you're in that slightly in the lap of the gods. I mean, at any level, aren't you? I mean, what the reason why City have been so successful at Premier League is because they just
they do
identify
it early.
signing so early and do it so early. So,
Yeah,
and I suppose no one expected us to go to San Diego and for Paul to suffer that horrific injury. So, I mean, that was obviously quite relatively short amount of time after that. And if you're going to spend that kind of money, would they have identified a player at that cost? In advance. I don't know. I would have thought going into the season, if I were, the executives at Wrexham, I would have thought that, Moles plus Dolby, who'd looked very good last season, plus
yeah,
Palmer, plus Waters, who I suppose was a bit untested, that
and
would have been
Bickerstaff.
enough.
Yeah, and Bickerstaff as well. Yeah,
And because, of course, Bickerstaff, who I thought against Bradford just looked physically not strong enough. He was getting knocked off too quickly. But I mean, he could evolve really. The Waters one really puzzles me because we didn't really see anything of him last season, and there seemed to be this vague idea that he was a player for this season. But we start the season and as I say, he just doesn't look like a 20-30 goal a
no,
season player. So,
yeah,
um, but we're discovering that now. So I don't know. I think anything which comes down to the last 24, 48 hours of a transfer window is kind of you're slightly in the lap of the gods.
No, I know, and I mean Waters. I can also understand if Mullin was carrying injury, but then again, we did this thing of giving everyone 2 or 3 year deals. I mean, some players don't need that amount of time on their contract. Some like Elliot Lee and Aaron Hayden, you definitely would, but I'm not sure we do need to give it to everyone. And I think Waters may be the example there. Now, another two signings we made: George Evans, who started at City, a couple of sort of big moves, played at Derby, and then a sign from Millwall, defensive mid who can also play at the back. I don't know if you know anything about him. I've seen bits and pieces of him. He looks a very tidy player. I do sort of think we did need a defensive mid. But as we said, Luke Young can probably see him off there. But maybe
Yeah.
he's more of a long-term replacement for Tozer, because you do need that sort of ball-playing centre half, don't you? Uh, I, so
Yeah, I
I
mean,
don't
I,
know.
I came across him a little bit just when he was at City, when we were covering a bit of academy stuff there, and he was one of those players who was really very much being talked about by the national press as as a great prospect for City for the future. So, and I think it's great if we're buying players who can be with us for 2 or 3 years, 4 years, and can evolve under us. Then fantastic. Um, I suppose there are. I suppose you just need kind of options, don't you? Because I mean, Andy Cannon, who I love, he's got a great gift, a great skills, but he can be knocked off,
Yeah,
can be knocked out of possession, I think. I mean, there were games even last season at the Halifax game away where, you know, that he did struggle in that game. Obviously, there are games where he brings an awful lot to us. So I suppose it's just about having the options.
it's
As long
such
as,
a
as long
great
as
squad,
he
isn't it?
stays Luke Young.
It's such a great
I mean,
squad. I
you've got to
mean,
pinch yourself sometimes. I mean,
yeah,
we're talking about whether we're going to sign, Armstrong last day of the season. I mean, wow, do you know what I mean? It's like it's just sort of slightly unbelievable, isn't it? The way we're even talking this way. But you would come back to the thing about the players who've got us to where we are. How good would it be if we could have a feature very strongly this season, with a lion's share of the contributors being those
yeah.
players from last season. That it can be Cannon, that it can be Young. It would be fantastic.
Yeah, yeah, I know what you mean, and I think part of the reason Stockport struggled so much last season was they changed everyone around as soon as they got up, and
Yeah,
I think we were clever with our long term planning there. Now, of course, as we've touched on, there are some players who've been bought for a specific job. Palmer was bought, Tozer to a certain degree was bought to get us out of non-league, and they've done that, and
yeah,
now we might be on the cusp of to see whether we're going to swap those around a bit. Another person who's come through and is much maligned in many ways is Mark Howard. Now,
yeah,
yeah, I mean, I don't know how much, if anything, you know about Arthur. Oh my God, Okong. Oh God, I'm terrible at
yeah.
saying.
The new goalkeeper.
Yeah,
Yes.
uh,
Yeah.
Big Arthur, I'm going to call him.
Yeah, yeah. 6'6", and
Yeah, and
he's a
he
big
hasn't
lad.
come in to sit on the bench, is he? So I think
No.
Howard's place is under threat again.
Yep.
I can't really say that Howard's done much wrong in the games
No.
he's come in
No.
for Foster. I'll be interested to see if they play the new keeper on Tuesday, because I don't really think you'll get much of a read off that game, because I think it will
No.
be pretty much a scratch side. But would it be tough on Howard if he lost his place to the new lad next league game around?
Well, I mean, it would on the basis of this season, I think, and it's something Mark Griffiths said on commentary yesterday. Just how well Mark had played, and how impressive that had been coming back into the team. Having really effectively, you thought it was over for Mark, didn't you, with
Yeah,
Foster, and it's great. The Super Mark Howard in goal. I don't know. I haven't been to that many games this season, but I did hear it on Tuesday, and there was definitely a little bit of that going off yesterday. And I just
yeah, I
thought,
heard it.
how class was Howard when Foster came in? Let's
Yeah.
not forget that. What an individual to, the grace and the kind of, team,
I
collegiate.
think that's why he's so popular. He's
Yeah, yeah,
really popular behind
yeah,
the scenes.
yeah. However, I do remember, I went to the Maidenhead away last season, and I mean there was that sort of kind of terrible gaff right at the end from him where
Yeah.
we ended up drawing the game. And I think it was that day Notts County had also drawn, and the 3 points that day would have, could have made a difference. So, I mean, he's shown that he potentially does have mistakes in him. So let's just see what the new guy, what
Big Arthur.
what he's got to offer, because we've seen in the MK Dons game, we're going to be up against some very strong sides, and we're going to need some real elite goalkeeping there, and I mean that could be the difference. So harsh in a sense, but I always felt that if Foster hadn't stayed, we were going to need it, a really good keeper, perhaps to take us through the
Yeah.
next 2 or 3 years, a young keeper. Langton is the one you've got your heart aches for, because I talking about people I love. I think we'd all feel the same about him, and what terrible misfortune he's had, with injury, and the irony of that being what he talked about in the first series of documentary, for God's sake, and it would be brilliant if he would be part of this journey, but it looks like we're not going to see him.
No, I know. I mean, every time he seems to be getting fit, something happens. All right, Ian, I want to get onto your book, and I'm going to read a part of the blurb from it. I'm not going to read it all because it's absolutely massive, but it is part of it.
A very long pod, yeah.
So the book is called Tinseltown, Hollywood and the Beautiful Game, a Match Made in Wrexham. Tinseltown is the story of this extraordinary, unpredictable, and often surreal football takeover and the remarkable events that followed. Written with the full cooperation of Wrexham FC, it's the inside story of what happened when Hollywood met a dot on the map, how a town was transformed, and when its football club, aspiring to survive in the fifth rung of the British football ladder, was sprinkled with gold dust and found ambition again. With unique access to key figures, the book charts the club's attempts to climb up the pyramid, providing a vivid sense of what's it like to play for this Hollywood team and the pressure that comes with it. Right, sounds great. It's already out, isn't it, Ian?
It's out. It was published on Thursday. Yeah, for sure.
We'll put a link into buy on this.
Thank you. Thanks.
Just before we get into the bones of it, well, so take us back. What was your arc as a fan? I mean, are you from Oswestry way originally?
Yeah, that's from Chirk, actually. That's
fine. That's the right side of the border.
Just the right side of the border. So yeah, and like so many of us, listeners, started watching the team when I was, 78 it was, 77, 78 season.
Oh, good one, yeah.
Alvin Griffiths, Les Cartwright, all the Bobby Shinton, a young Mickey Thomas and all that. And I suppose, I sort of had spells, drifted away from watching the team perhaps a bit more, and then get back into watching the team more. I've always lived, within an hour's distance of town, so I've never been far to go. Plus, obviously, family out that way also. But one of the things, and then I worked for the. I've been in newspapers for about 30 years. I worked for the Daily Post.
Did you start the Leader, or what
started at the Liverpool Daily Post, or the Daily Post?
Okay, yeah.
Daily Post and Echo in '89, and
my old paper as well.
Is that right? Yeah.
I started there as well, and then they split it to the Welsh edition. Did you come across with that with Ali McRae, or?
Yeah, I did. I worked for an editor called Keith Ely in the early '90s. I worked with a great mate of mine, Richard Williams, who's a lot of listeners will know, who was
really well.
Yeah, we were both kind of assistant editors on the Daily Post at the same time. Rich was the one who actually knew something about North Wales, but I mean, in those days it was kind of called the Liverpool Daily Post, even the ones that sold, in North Wales. But there was very much two editions then. It was very regionalised, and it was a bit of a curiosity, really, because there we were in Old Hall Street, Liverpool, producing this paper every day, but really, the lion's share of our readership was like, an hour's drive away, really. And the further,
I mean, Gwynedd, Anglesey, that's where it was real sort of heartland.
Sure,
really,
and writers like David Greenwood and Ian Lang and Carl Butler, Emmett Williams, like those were our news reporters in those days, and they knew North Wales in a way that I certainly didn't. Richard certainly did. And then the Liverpool edition of it then ultimately folded. There's now no longer a Liverpool edition of the Daily Post. But of course, the Daily Post itself became purely a North Wales paper based I think still at Llandudno Junction. I think that's where.
It was. I think. I don't think there's a HQ per se anymore. I think
Okay,
they go.
okay,
Yeah,
yeah,
they went to Colwyn Bay for a bit, and I think they have rooms. But I think it's as most stuff is done
yeah,
now. It's
totally,
the
yeah, yeah,
pandemic sort of changed the face of journalism in many ways. I mean,
yeah,
I imagine you work from home
for
most
sure,
of yeah.
yeah, for
Um,
sure, yeah. But I mean, great, and I kind of never resist the opportunity to sort of bang on about, local papers, regional papers. Looks like we've both known it. The people who are actually the nuts and bolts of communities. They know the people, and for me, Wrexham Football Club, Mark Curry, the
yeah.
late Mark, who a great man, who
How
was.
did you find his driving?
Well, I think we've had this conversation before. I didn't actually. I never sat in a car with Mark, so
Oh,
I
well,
think you did.
that's why you've kept your youthful look. Yeah, considering his wife was a driving instructor. Yeah, but as you say, Mark was one of the wrote for the Daily Post for years about Wrexham, had a real authority about it,
Yeah,
and knew the ins and outs of the club, and sadly died just before this sort
exactly.
of
He would have loved
Collingwood.
all this. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I wonder, would he have liked it? I know he would have had no airs and graces with the likes of Ryan and Rob or Shaun
Yeah, no,
Harvey,
there was
would
a
he?
certain kind of it's not. Yeah, he was a dry. Yeah, there was a dry humour about Mo. I think you're probably right. That's why it'd be fascinating to know, wouldn't it? So
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So no, that was it. Then I kind of I've been sort of national papers on the Independent for sort of nearly 20 years. I'm on the Mail now, and writing about sport has kind of meant I've not covered, been able to get to games as much as I'd like, but the last couple of years, a bit less of the doing the live stuff and writing football for the paper and the website, and more getting back to the racecourse, the Kairos, which has been fantastic.
I mean, I see your brother there all the time, but just to touch on the Mail and where we are with Wrexham coverage now. I mean, obviously, I work in the national for a national paper as well, and I would say probably out of your top four of Liverpool, Arsenal, United, maybe someone sneaking through like Chelsea or City. I'd say that Wrexham is the club that most people are interested in after that, which
Yeah,
sounds absolutely nuts, but it's such a rich story now, which I know you've sort of gone in and gone in length with the book. But for us as Wrexham supporting journalists to be able to write this amount about
yeah.
our hometown club is absolutely it's
It's
astounding,
just
really,
surreal,
isn't it?
isn't it? It's surreal. It's surreal, and I suppose in a way, what I've tried to kind of get at, in kind of being able to write a book about it is to try and point out that you know um, this the beauty of Wrexham and the individuals who make Wrexham the place it is, both the town and the club. Robin Ryan's arrival is not year dot. The,
Yeah,
the club was bought by Robin Ryan because the Wrexham Supporters Trust, took out all the debt. They made it debt free. It washed its face. Okay, money was tight pre-COVID. We wonder where it was all going, but unless it had been that financial landscape that Robin Ryan represented with, then they would not have bought the club. They would not have
mm,
invested that 2 million in the club. And then beyond that, beyond the actual football club, I just think there is this sort of slight thing about you are right. There's this incredible appetite for all things Wrexham because of them, but there are just so many people in town who make the town great, who were doing it anyway. I'm
yeah,
just, um, I'd like just to take Josh Roberts and Wrexham Lager, for example,
yeah,
who just at the point when Robin Ryan was sort of in negotiations to buy the club, there was Wrexham Lager, there was Josh come back to work for the, if you like, the family firm. They just launched Bootlegger,
yeah,
and then COVID hits, so they can't put Bootlegger into the shops. And suddenly, they go for direct sales, and the roof goes off the actual sales up. Everyone's buying Wrexham Lager, and the way that was marketed and the way that was kind of driven, and with a brilliant product behind it, by as we
yeah,
all know. So I wanted to try and get across the sense that this wasn't really a town that needed saving as such. It wasn't the damsel in distress. There was some brilliant people in our town. And what Rob and Ryan, I think, have done is kind of put a spring in people's step, giving us a little bit of self confidence, giving us a sense that, you know, we're great. There's a fantastic beauty about Wrexham, and perhaps sometimes we needed reminding of it. So just trying to
Yeah.
kind of peel back from before all of this kind of razzle dazzle started to what we've had all along.
Yeah, I mean, it is quite it's a very distinct place due to where it is. I mean, I know it. Yeah, of course, it's close to Liverpool. Of course, it's close to Chester, but it is the biggest town in a whole region, or a city now in the whole region. And I
Yeah.
think it gives it a unique sort of perspective on things. But you know, it does have that sort of industrial hub. It does have, you know, a rich heritage, but also I think, also, you know, there's beauty on the doorstep. I mean,
Well, there is,
you've
Andy,
got,
and I think what I love about the kind of and you know, I think, by the way, I'd just sort of forgotten to even look at this, forgotten even to go into my own hometown. I just go to the racecourse and then back home again, you know,
yeah,
too often, you know, and this has been a chance to sort of not do that, to do a bit more. And but what I think I love about the, you know, there's the underdog thing, you know. I mean, Wales being the underdog in some ways,
mm,
you know, Wrexham being the underdog, being the less, not being the fancy Dan like Chester, you know, and the fact that, you know, you drive along the bypass and you can easily miss Wrexham, can't you? Like, because you get into, you come from the northwest as I do, you're into
yeah,
Wales, and as soon as you're into it, you're back into England again. So
yeah,
there's a sort of a striving, I think, to try to sort of make yourself, to make your beauty and make the brilliance of the place known. And there was something that struck me. I spent a bit of time with Sarah Hughes Jones, who's the local PC for her beat is the town centre, and I spent the evening just on the beat with her, really, after it was after the Dorking game, I think, last season. It's a bitterly cold night, and we were just talking about. I was watching what her job looks like. She was talking to him, and she was just sort of saying that just little things like, I mean, Chester's pubs came out of COVID restrictions before ours did. So
yeah,
suddenly a lot of people got in the habit of going to Chester rather than going into town, and
mm,
we've actually never quite made that up again, you know. And
yeah,
just
yeah,
the little battles that you fight, and yet what a great town it is, really. So all these
yeah.
little things, and there's, I think, probably in the kind of the madness of writing about sport for any media, whether it's, you know, your podcast, you know, our website, or whatever it might be, you can, sometimes it's just not time to stop and look and say, well, what is this town? Who are the people who are driving this town? You know, um, and what are its qualities?
No,
And
I know what you mean, mate. I mean, I moved out of Wrexham when I was 18, and I haven't really moved back. But moving away makes me love the place more.
yeah,
And it's like, you know, we all in the office go, "Oh, my time's worse than your times. My time's shit than
yeah,
yours." But you know, I mean, I'm allowed to slag Wrexham off because I'm from Wrexham. But
yeah,
you know what I
yeah,
mean? It's like I'm fiercely protective of the place. You know, people like Les Evans, you remember, really
of course, yeah,
sum it up
yeah,
for
yeah,
me. A local character, just would do anything for anyone, and absolutely bonkers. But you know, a fierce intelligence behind it as well, and
totally, yeah,
someone, yeah, and someone who's you know, who's very proud of where they came from and always wanted to support the club and the town. I mean, just going back more towards the club. I mean,
mm.
it's an ownership model like no other, isn't it? And I think it'd be very hard to replicate it. What's it like when you sort of look under the hood of that? Is it all plain sailing, or is there sort of, is the club sort of struggling to come to terms with how big it is at the moment?
Yeah. I don't think it's all plain sailing. I mean, it's quite hard to. I mean, the club have been great in terms of helping me to write this book. Shaun Harvey, I have to give him a shout out right up front, in the sense that him giving me the chance to, well, speak to himself, but also speak to a brilliant individual called Steve Horowitz, who listeners will
Yeah,
know, who's the
yeah,
financier
yeah,
who made this deal happen. And you know, and then Steve helped me realize I need to try and reach George Dewey, who's Ryan's business partner. Again, Shaun really helping me to sort of to connect with some of these people, you know. So, but I think where, in terms of the teething problems come from, is just that it's just such an accelerated growth. It's such an
yeah,
accelerated development, and I think it's a classic thing. I think in business, where you go from, the business equivalent would be sort of from small to medium-sized business. I just think, at times you sort of feel that they just need more people. They just need more people to actually be able to kind of deal with the incredible scale, the torrent of kind of attention that they're getting, really. So
Yeah.
I think that's one of the challenges, to actually scale up, and never mind buying a new centre forward, but getting the people. And obviously there have been people who've, I'm thinking about, we had
The
we
people,
had a commercial head of media
yeah,
who came
they've
away
walked
quite
away, haven't
quickly,
they? Yeah.
really, because there was just so much. It was such a kind of a deluge. It was almost, those jobs became, very, very difficult to handle in terms of the numbers of people they had in executive roles, being asked to do them. So I think that's where the challenge comes in.
Yeah.
But I think the connections are that Horowitz helped put Shaun in place. I think it's been really good to have someone with that kind of football experience. And then I think Les Reed, so you've actually got people who don't allow the kind of the criminals who we know exist in football, the agents who'll steal from you, to steal from the club. It's given us a sense of stability as we've gone along.
Right. I mean, in many ways, this is Shaun Harvey's redemption story, isn't it? Because he maligned to a certain degree at Leeds, maybe Bradford as well, and the Football League. He's come here, and I think there's an actual love for Shaun Harvey now, which I don't think he's probably experienced much before in his life. What was he like to deal with, sort of one-on-one? I mean, he's always been like a bit of a mystery figure for us
Yeah,
on this podcast, because he's the CEO who isn't the CEO, but basically
yeah,
runs everything.
yeah.
And you know, I think over the last sort of 18 months, certainly the narrative on Shaun has changed, hasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's just, for me, just been he's very straightforward. He can be brusque, in a kind of that kind of Yorkshire way. Fair enough, totally fair enough. You kind of know totally where you stand with Shaun, 100%. But and there's no but there. There's no qualifying point. He's straightforward. He knows what he wants. There's no extraneous detail. He just, and he's given me, across the piece, 7 or 8 hours of his time across a number of Zooms and meetings to sit down and talk through the granular detail of how all this happened. His own involvement, his involvement in the actual purchase of the club, the negotiations with, the supporters trust, the involvement of Les.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of detail that he's helped me to understand. And because I wanted to try and make this a piece of reporting, I didn't want to kind of just to be like, I love Wrexham, so let's just say how
Yeah,
great
yeah.
it is. So yeah, I think I don't know about redemption. I mean, I think he did some great stuff at the at the EFL. I think I we wouldn't probably. I'm not sure whether be watching iFollow without Shaun. I mean, I think that was one of his kind of,
Mm.
he's worked on that, and on a number of kind of big important sort of issues going on in that world.
Yeah, I mean, I think more what I mean is the PR of Shaun has changed, because I don't think people can really disagree that he's done a lot of good work behind the scenes
Yeah,
throughout his time in football. But there were certain elements that people always
yeah,
seized on, which is, Leeds
yeah,
went into administration,
yeah.
or yeah, yeah, he was forced
I mean,
out of the
he's been
AFL.
involved in clubs which are, really basket case clubs in some
Mm.
respects, in terms of trying to kind of, keep that ship, afloat, and keep. He's not had kind of benign roles. He did tell me a story about coming to Wrexham as company secretary at Scarborough back in the day, and being the local hospitality from the Wrexham board was such that I think he fell asleep on the bus by the time he got to the English border on the way back. 'Cause they did like a drop back in those days, as they probably still do now. But yeah, I mean, I think it sounds like he's had challenging roles, Andy, and I suppose this one it's got its challenges, hasn't it? In a sense
Oh,
that
definitely.
a lot of
Yeah, yeah,
expectation, and I think one of the interesting aspects of the takeover really was the quite appropriate and quite justified sort of skepticism, intellectual skepticism on the part of the supporters trust. I mean, like, because so, you know, we you know, they rescue the club from the abyss after the grim years of Hamilton and all those that followed Hamilton. And then you get sort of two individuals who we don't even know they are for quite a long time, you know, arriving and announcing they're going to save the club. So there was an appropriate level of skepticism there, I think, from our side. Um, and you know, he's had that to contend with as well, I think.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, what was the one sort of thing that really surprised you writing the book? But would be it be, you know, behind the scenes of the club, or maybe the town, something maybe you'd forgotten that.
Yeah, yeah. Well, a small thing actually, which I know is not the sort of thing you're asking me, but is the mine rescue.
Yeah, I've heard
Basically,
a lot. I mean, talking with
honestly,
the
yeah,
Declan Swans out in Philadelphia, this
yeah,
is something I think the third season of the doc will really zone in on, and I think it will become
yeah.
quite a big thing for us to protect. So
I
if you
think
could
it's just,
explain, yeah, yeah,
you know, because so the mine rescue center is basically, you know, it's just off Mice Green Road. I mean, amidst those, you know, red brick terrace sort of back to backs just opposite the ground, and it was basically, it used to be the place where they trained the miners in rescuing each other, or rescuing if another Gresford were to happen. Um, and it was saved from demolition, and it now is just such an incredible place where it's a kind of a community hub. It's a brilliant cafe. It's um, and I mean, Humphrey Kerr spent quite a lot of time there. Fleur has been there. It's just, but it actually delivers an awful lot to the town. It's benefited an awful lot from the increased, you know, support for the club, but it delivers an awful lot. Alan and Margaret Jones, who are just key to the preserving the memory of Gresford, um, and the men who died there, and that was one thing I didn't know about that place. uh,
no,
I love that so much. But I suppose you're asking me for something perhaps more perhaps on the money in terms of the club, really. I suppose the thing that surprised me was just how challenging it was for the trust to actually. I thought there would just have been a unanimity among, you know, the trust executives that this had to happen. You know, we all
yeah,
now know that Robin Ryan is an incredible thing, and it's been great for us. And they've got grace, they've got modesty, they've got self effacement. They're great owners, but um, there were arguments behind the scenes. You know, there were disputes. There were Zooms that, you know, people terminated their involvement with because they were furious about the fact that they felt that there wasn't enough transparency about the ongoing process. Um, and you know, the different sides of that argument would have very different views on how the others conducted
yeah,
themselves. You know, in some ways, you know, Spencer Harris, who I do actually think is a hero of this story,
mm,
in terms of doing, you know, making this deal happen. He would sort of quite rightly point out that if you know, if he and Rob Parry, who he was working with, hadn't made the deal happen, you know, how would they be remembered? They would be remembered as the individuals who
let it
didn't
go.
deliver
They didn't
salvation.
sign the Beatles. Yeah,
Exactly. However, equally saying, there were people who were saying, well, look, you know, if we don't have this degree of legal representation, if we don't, you know, do this kind of due diligence on this process, then what if they take over and they basically run our club into the ground? We will never be forgiven for having kind of, you know, destroyed the club 10 years
yeah,
on from the aftermath of Hamilton. So that surprised me. And I actually thought in the early stages of the story that it would be a rather linear sort of story of like, you know, we don't know who these people are, and then we know who they are, and they all lived happily ever after.
yeah,
But there was kind of uh, struggle, and I think, you know, out of struggle, generally, you know, great things can come. So massive respect to Spencer, you know, who I think is a really top individual, but massive respect to those members of the trust who um, fought tooth and nail to make sure this was right for us when we didn't know that it was necessarily going to be what it turned out to be.
No, I know it's it's never simple, is it? And we've always got to be watchful as Wrexham fans. We more than most clubs, what we've been through, and I think
Yeah,
I think we've got to be watchful even when Ryan and Rob are here. We still have to ask the difficult questions, really,
yeah,
don't we?
yeah.
I mean, just sort of to sort of sum up, where is the ceiling for this in your sort of in your sort of mind as a football journalist, as a fan, as a lad from the area? How far do you think we can actually go?
Feels to me like, I mean, I don't know. It feels to me like, I mean, mathematically, Ryan's statement about why shouldn't we hope for the Premier League, mathematically, there is no reason why that shouldn't happen in terms of like the size of ground we'll have, the potential, you know, the financial investment we might have beyond them, private equity backing on top of Rob and Ryan,
Yeah,
or the more of the
that
like.
has to happen at some point, doesn't
It
it?
does
I
have
mean,
to
Rob
happen at
and
some
Ryan
point.
don't have the cash
Yeah,
to take this step.
yeah. But but in terms of, I think the reality, I think I sort of feel like you could definitely see us getting promoted to League One. You could see us getting promoted to Championship with a kind of, sort of corporate backing we're getting, the sponsorship support that Rob and Ryan drive. I mean, that it's a unique model, as you say, whereby never have we seen a football club within our shores where the main kind of the core kind of the main benefit, or the main asset, I should say, of
Yeah,
the owners, in that sense, that so there's nothing to stop us getting, I think, ultimately from League One to Championship. But I think that for me is where it stops being like it is now. I think to get to Championship to Premier League, it's like the Wild West, isn't it? It's like
yeah, yeah,
kind of spending. I suppose you could say Luton Town have done it. Then why shouldn't we do it? But it comes back to something I think we were talking about, you and I, just before we came on, really, which is that you know there is a bit of us that does yearn for, our identity as Wrexham fans is one of struggle and kind of sort of black humor and, I don't know, losing at Eastleigh or whatever. I mean, my WhatsApp group, my brother Pete,
we perversely enjoy it, don't we?
we do,
Sometimes.
yeah, yeah. So I've got my WhatsApp group with my brother and Jamie and Dan, his lads, is Dorking Away. And you were talking about Braintree Away. And, we've not changed the name of that group, in a sense.
Yeah,
So what I sort of slightly fear is that if we do go from, we start to aspire to go to the very top, then, you know, do we actually retain what we have as a club? The soul, does the soul really stay with us? We don't know until it happens, do we? But I think, the Premier League now is a world of, you're basically playing against Gulf states, aren't you? Sovereign wealth funds of Gulf states.
mm,
To me, that just feels like it's not a British league anymore. It's a global league. It's kind of gone, really. And that league, that coming round again, feels a bit like Groundhog Day to me. Who's going to win the football? Who's going to win the Premier League? Manchester City. We kind of know that. Who's going to be relegated? Well, we know the usual suspects.
yeah.
So I sort of feel like it could go beyond Championship, but I mean, and I can't believe we're even having this conversation.
No,
But I don't really kind of want it to go any. I want to sort of preserve a little bit of what we had.
yeah, I know what you mean. It's almost like get up there, do a season, say we've done it, and then and then battle it out in the
Well, of course,
championship.
'78 was that's what we did. A town of our size has proven in the late '70s, didn't it, that we can exist in the second tier. I mean, it was obviously different, entirely different days, but it would be great to get back there again. I think we might have played Spurs in the second division
Yeah,
back in those days.
Chelsea. Yeah, looking
Yeah,
back, Newcastle. Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
I mean, we are engaging the rest of North Wales. I mean, Richard Williams will tell you this. That, it's no longer a Wrexham everyone's second club in the likes of Bangor. Llandudno,
yeah,
Real. It's coming to the fact now that more and more are seeing Wrexham as their first club, and they want to be on this ride with us. And if
yeah,
I know it was always Rob and Ryan's sort of dream to sort of engage that whole region of a country, and I think they're sort of performing it. I think the next thing for us now is to get players from there. To
yeah,
next stage of our evolution really is to go back to sort of finding the gems at the moment are on their way to Everton.
Well, that's right. Yeah,
Yeah.
Les did tell me in the last time we spoke for the book that they were investing in the academy to try and get to Category 1 status, and that would really allow them to, to bring in the very best, and to bring in talents. Well, he was talking also about Merseyside and stuff, but let's just hope we can draw them in from, because let's remember how it started. 78, Joey
Yeah.
Jones, Mickey.
Yeah.
They're there, aren't they? They're out there. If we can just find them and develop
Yeah.
them.
I mean, yeah, North Wales is always used to be the hotbed of Welsh football. I think we've moved away a little bit of that for reasons, that are too complex to explain here. But,
Yeah,
if you can say to the best cream of talent in North Wales come to play for Ryan and Rob's club, there'll be
yeah.
you'll be you'll be the hometown boy or whatever. I think that is appealing more to parents than come and get lost in Everton's youth system.
Yeah, and certainly with the women's team who I'm a chance to meet Gemma Owen for this book, who
Yeah, great
fantastic,
talker. Yeah.
brilliant conversation. Could have talked sort of for hours longer really with Gemma, but there are examples there in that team of players who've gone to play on Merseyside and who've come back who felt like this is where they want to play, this is where they can best develop. So hopefully that experience for the women can be replicated for the men.
Great, Ian. Absolutely brilliant to talk to you. I'm just going to do. We always do a quick fire round with when we have a guest on. It's usually players, so you're going to have to answer more as a fan. But of all your time supporting Wrexham, who do you think was the most skillful?
Mike Lake.
Oh, I remember Mike Lake.
Now,
Yes,
I don't know
came
why it
on.
was, but there was a period where I don't know. I just couldn't believe Mike Lake wasn't playing in the first division or the Premier League, whatever it was that time. But he just had something on him
Yeah,
and about him that was just immense. I can't
yeah.
actually, Andy, remember what years we were talking about, but what exactly years he was with it. But I mean, I loved him. I loved
It
him.
was 92, 93. I think it was the promotion season. We got him on loan from Sheffield United. Then we
Yeah.
had the mistake of buying him. I'd never seen a guy balloon so much since he
Okay,
got
well, I
to the
must be
midfield.
remembering the promotion season. That was the one
Yeah,
where we went up at Northampton. Was
yeah,
that the one?
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I remember the night at Northampton because we were playing on the edge of the cricket pitch at Northampton. So it's incredible that the tricks like can play. I've been watching them for 30 years or however long, 40 years. On the basis of one season, I've just said that Mike Lake is the all-time most skillful, but it only takes a season.
No, and it's also what becomes an icon for you. Yeah, it is.
Yeah,
Yeah, it is as simple as that. I mean, we talk about Emad all the time. If you think about it, he only played about 10 games for us, but he's
yeah,
absolutely etched
yeah,
onto my brain. Right, the
yeah.
next one is, who do you think is the biggest moaner?
That's a good question. I get the feeling that you're going to have to sort of edit this out so that we haven't got long pauses.
No, don't worry. It's the one
Uh,
that catches a lot of people out. I mean, depending on the era, there's a Darren Ferguson versus Neil Ashton sort of
okay,
clash
yeah,
going on.
yeah,
I don't know
yeah,
if you can think of anyone older than that.
yeah. Okay, let me think about that. Yeah,
We can come
I
back to
sort of
that
got
one.
the feeling I once met John Roberts from the
Yeah,
'78 team at a kids' training day at Plasmaddock. There were various players, of that time who would the kids could go along and meet them, and there was Joe Corrigan, there was Mickey, there was Phil Neal, and there was John Roberts. And I'm going to say John Roberts. I think he could have been because I actually met him in that. I think he might have been a bit of a moaner, Andy.
right. Okay. We'll have to. Well, there's a new name in the frame, and that is John Roberts.
Thank you,
We'll he'll be the go-to one for the older fan.
thank you. I like to sort of provide something for the older fan here. Yeah.
Who out of you must have seen people come out of the racecourse players tunnel in various states of clobber. Who do you think is the worst dressed?
Um, I've seen quite a lot of pictures of Mickey in
Yeah,
sponge
dodgy.
dress at that time. Um, and Flinny once told me a story about how after the Arsenal game in '92, that Tony Gubber wanted to take. I think we actually might have even written about this in the Fearless and Devotion
Yeah,
um,
yeah, yeah.
theme. Yeah, I know. Tony Gubba wanted Mickey and Flinny to be driven up to Manchester to do match of the day interview on the night of that game. And I mean, Flinny sort of basically said that Mickey would not be in a state to do that or appropriately attired to do that. So I think I also love Mickey very, very, very much, but maybe Mickey Thomas.
Yeah, I
Does
mean,
he
I've
feature?
seen him. Yeah, I've seen him in some interesting gear. I'm going to put. He loved the shell suits, even even when they completely weren't in fashion. Um, and finally, of this sort of section, which player would you least like to fight?
Ooh, James McLean.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
tell you what, I'd be down on the deck in about a nanosecond.
yeah.
He's an operator. I don't want to bring it too contemporary. I've only seen him play twice, but I would not want to be in a fight with that guy.
No, no, yeah. Don't wear a Rangers shirt and wind him up. Yeah.
Exactly, yeah.
Right, Ian, it's been brilliant talking to you. Before I let you go, we've got two games coming up, so just wouldn't mind your predictions on them. So we've got Newcastle in the, what do you call it, auto
Yeah,
windscreens,
yeah, whatever.
Papa John's, is it?
Yeah.
You expecting a full team there, and what's your score prediction?
Well, let's just say that it would be so very, very sweet to beat the Saudi Arabian-backed
Yeah.
sovereign. Let's just say 3-1.
Oh wow, great. Yeah,
They're going to play their under 21s.
yeah,
We'll give a few of our lads a go. So go on,
yeah.
3-1 for that one. Yeah.
And then we've got Doncaster on Saturday, who
Oh,
haven't
yeah.
started particularly very well, have they? But
Yeah.
no, I think one thing about this league, I think there's quality everywhere, and I think anyone can beat anyone else on a certain day,
Yeah.
which you didn't get in the conference. So even though they're bottom, tough one, do you think?
Yeah, I sort of taken a lot of encouragement out of the last two games for us. I think we seem to have just kind of worked out the kind of way you need to play in this division, the physicality that you need. So, but I do think we've got a conceded goal in us for sure.
Yeah.
So let's just say 3-2.
Okay, another humdinger at the racecourse. I'm going to go similar on that one. I think it's going to be 3-1 against Doncaster. I think it's going to be tighter at Newcastle. I, I don't know. Can you draw in this competition? Is that a possibility?
Isn't
I
it?
think
Is it a group? Is it a
group,
round
isn't it?
robin? Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So I'm going to go for a draw on that. I think it's going to be one each. Ian, thank you so much for talking to us. Have you got a copy of the book you can just show us so
I
people
do.
can see?
Yeah, I'm going to just step across the room there. Actually, yeah.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
available on Amazon, all good bookshops, be including the one in town. So yeah, pick up a copy.
Thanks so much for having me on. I'm a great fan of the show, and it's a real privilege to be actually on it. So thank you. Thanks so much
No,
for.
no, love talking to you. Thanks so much.
All right.
Goodbye.